I've got an interesting one for you today. We're going to be comparing two RoboVacs side by side, the eufy X8 Pro and the X9 Pro. I reviewed eufy's X8 and X8 Hybrid a couple of years ago, and quite a lot of you showed interest in that video actually. So when I saw that these new models brought in the major upgrade I wanted to see added, I knew I had to get them into review. These are both 2-in-1 mop and vacuum cleaners, but I was intrigued by the fact that the X8 Pro is actually newer and was released after the X9 Pro. You'd perhaps think the 9 was the successor. So that's part of the reason I wanted to make this video. We'll be covering exactly what's different between the two, how well each one performs, and the plethora of smart features they both have, and that way you'll be able to decide which model is best for you. Now for full disclosure, eufy did send these over to me to review, but as always I still made the review independently, and I'll be sharing only my honest thoughts. I'll start off by showing you what you get in the box. They each come with the RoboVac of course, a user guide, and the base station, which I'll show you in a second. The X8 Pro also comes with a separate mop attachment, a waterproof pad to rest on when the mop is wet, and a cleaning tool which has a brush and a blade. The X8 Pro is more of a typical round shape, whilst the X9 Pro has more of a D shape, but they share most of the same components. You've got the laser distance sensor on top, used for mapping and navigation, as well as the spot cleaning, start-stop, and recharge buttons. You can lift up these top plates to access the removable dust box. They're slightly different in size and shape, but they each come with a clever dual filter system and a washable. There's a bumper at the front, along with infrared sensors, and then the charging pins at the back. The X8 Pro uses infrared for obstacle avoidance, whereas you've got wall sensors and a 3D time of flight plus RGB camera combo on the X9 Pro, and I'll talk about the difference with these two later. On the underside there's a 360 swivel wheel and height adjusting wheels for motion, a side brush and a rolling brush. Notice on the X8 Pro this has bristles and a metal comb for the automatic detangling feature. There are also anti-drop sensors on both, so you're free to let the RoboVacs clean upstairs without fear of them plummeting to their death. They're smart enough to know when they reach a drop and only clean up to it. I've had zero issues with this in over 3 years of using RoboVacs, and it's very reliable. And then the key difference between the two models is the pentagonal mop pads on the X9 Pro. These pair up with a carpet detection sensor at the front to automatically raise the mop pads when over carpet and lower them to clean hard surfaces. I'll show you this in action, and it's absolutely as clever as it sounds. With the X8 Pro there's a more basic design. The mop pad is instead an attachment you can clip into place, and this works exactly like the X8 Hybrid we saw a couple of years ago. There's a detachable water tank you fill yourself, so you can add or remove the mopping functionality to the X8 Pro as you see fit. The X9 Pro automatically supplies the mop pads with water through the base station, and I'll show you how this works. Now I should say that most of the RoboVac components can be easily removed for cleaning or replacement, and the companion app can track their usage over time and suggest when you should replace parts for optimal performance. Not sure if it's time to replace your filters yet? Don't worry, the app will tell you. There are handy guides for cleaning and replacement, as well as links to purchase any new accessories you may need directly from the app. So these are the base stations side by side. This is where your RoboVac will dock itself for recharging at the end of a clean. Now you can see why I didn't show these on my unboxing table. With the X8 Pro you've got two choices. The standard docking station, which works just like the X8 Hybrid and serves only as a home base and charging point, or you can get the self-emptying base station, inside of which is a 2.5 litre vacuum bag. So when the RoboVac docks, it automatically empties the dust box into this larger base station, providing you with weeks of convenient, self-sufficient cleaning. It means you won't need to manually empty the RoboVac every day or every few days. You can let the base station do all of the work. Of course it depends on how quickly you fill these bags, but eufy estimates you'll get around 45 days of cleaning before you'll need to replace the vacuum bag in the base station. Once again, the app keeps track of things and will alert you when the vacuum bag is full. This was the major feature I wanted to see added to the X8s before, and obviously massively increases convenience. The whole point of a RoboVac is to save you from the manual labour, so the more self-sufficient they are, the better. The X9 Pro comes with this big boy, and as opposed to a self-emptying vacuum station, this is a self-cleaning mopping station. Rather than a vacuum bag, inside you'll find two removable tanks, one for the clean water and one for the dirty. The base station will not only supply the RoboVac with water for the mop pads, but will wash and clean the pads as well. The used water gets rinsed from the pads and pumped into the dirty water tank. After the final washing, it will then automatically dry the mop pads with 40-degree heated drying, and that prevents any bacteria or unpleasant smell buildup. So this is how you can get multiple mop cleans without any input required from the user. All of the washing, cleaning, and drying is done automatically. Eventually, of course, you will need to change the tanks, and the number of cleans you'll get before needing to do so will depend on the type of clean you do, more on that later, and obviously the size of the area covered. The app will alert you when the clean tank is empty or the dirty tank is full, and it's very simple to both fill the tank using tap water, or Eufy supplies a cleaning solution you can add, and also to empty and rinse out the dirty tank. You can actually track the remaining water levels as well. Eufy puts this feature into their lab section in the app. That's where features still in development go, because really it's only estimating the water levels. It assumes a full tank when you put it back, and then estimates the remaining water level based on the washes and cleans from the base station. It has actually been pretty accurate so far, but I guess the important thing to know is when a tank is either full or empty, which it tells you anyway. The build quality of both the RoboVacs themselves and all of their components, but also these base stations, is very impressive. You can tell that even the plastics used are high quality. There are LEDs to provide information about the RoboVac status, such as charging, or even just to alert you of a missing tank, or when the clean tank is empty. You can spot that at a glance even without the app. Okay, so how do you set up and use these RoboVacs? Well, the first thing is to place down the base station, giving it some surrounding room for the RoboVac to navigate freely, but basically, the app guides you through everything. You first start a quick mapping run, so the RoboVac can go out and map your home. This is one of my favourite upgrades with these Pro models, because having a preliminarily mapped out home makes your first proper clean much faster, because the RoboVacs already have a good idea of the layout. Thanks to the laser tech, they barely need to enter a room before detecting the edges. They don't need to hug the walls to find the perimeter, and my entire downstairs was mapped out almost completely in just a few minutes. They will then optimize a pathway through your home for the most efficient cleaning as possible, refining the map with each successive clean and adjusting for any changes you make in your home. You can see from my map the Z pattern the RoboVacs travel in. I'd say by only the third or fourth clean they'd already mapped out the optimal route, so I've been very pleased with the improved efficiency. At the end, they automatically detect and assign rooms for the map, which is pretty smart, and actually I barely needed to make any adjustments myself. You're given the tools to make your own divisions, merge rooms, and rename them to match your home. The advantage of this is you then have the option to change the cleaning method from auto, which just covers the entire map, to room-specific cleans. You could also just draw zones onto the map if there are specific regions only you want cleaned, and you can have these areas covered twice if you'd rather. Even in auto mode though, you can change the cleaning sequence to go in the room order you think is best. That's also really useful. If you want to block off specific areas of your home, you can set virtual boundary lines or no-go zones to make sure the RoboVac doesn't enter them. That can be particularly useful for tricky areas where your RoboVac might get stuck. You can also set no-mop areas for places you may want vacuumed but not mopped. All of this so far applies to both RoboVac models, but one of the key differences between them is that you probably won't need to ever use no-mop zones with the X9 Pro. Thanks to the carpet detection sensor and auto-lifting mops, you can just leave the X9 Pro to it. It will vacuum those carpets and only mop on the hard floors. You can actually change this behaviour in the app to suit your home. By default, this is how it works. But you could instead have the RoboVac simply avoid carpeted areas rather than switch to vacuum-only mode. Or if you really want, it will just mop straight over those carpets too. Personally, I'm sticking with the default auto mode, because having the X9 Pro seamlessly switch to vacuum only and lift up those mop pads by itself is not only super convenient, but pretty freaking cool as well. It doesn't matter if it's a simple bathroom mat or a fully carpeted room. Detection is near instant, and this feature works surprisingly well. With the X8 Pro, if you've got that mop attachment installed, it absolutely will mop straight over your carpet, unless you set no mop or no go zones. It can't lift the mop pad, and that's what we saw with the X8 Hybrid. Another interesting difference is with the obstacle avoidance. You may see on the spec sheet AI Map 2.0 technology for the X8 Pro versus the X9's 3.0, and this is where the X9's 3D time of flight and RGB cameras come into play. This RoboVac uses AI to detect various objects in your home. These will actually flag up on the map in real time. This is all done locally, and no data is sent to the cloud. It can avoid even tricky small objects, and I was very surprised to see it even avoiding a cable I left in its path. That's a very common RoboVac enemy, and in fact, the X8 Pro didn't fare so well against it. The X8 Pro doesn't have the AI detection feature, and will only avoid larger obstacles like people, pets, and furniture. I also wanted to point out the slight barrier height clearance difference between the models. Both are able to climb up to around a couple of centimeters. I've got some rooms in my home at a slightly higher elevation, including this ledge to my bathroom, but they're able to climb up and down easily. There's only a 1mm difference in the clearance, so it's highly likely that anywhere the X9 Pro could go in your home, the X8 Pro could as well. But I did actually find a particularly tall clearance into a thick carpeted room that the X9 Pro could drive directly into, whereas the X8 Pro couldn't. However, and this is really important to say, the RoboVacs are smart enough to try different entry angles when they encounter obstacles. I manually drove the RoboVacs in a straight line just to show off that difference there. Yes, you can drive these like remote control cars, but actually when I have them cleaning my home normally, both of them do pass over this gap without much trouble. So it's unlikely that 1mm would be a deal breaker, but for the sake of being thorough, I wanted to highlight this difference. Let me take you now through the rest of the eufy Clean app, because there's quite a lot here to make use of. The menus and layout have been simplified from previous RoboVacs, and we now get a percentage battery indicator as opposed to just the rough estimate. That's really useful to have. We've seen these tabs at the bottom to specify the areas to be cleaned, but the mode option lets you personalize the cleaning method as well. You can set the suction level from quiet, standard, turbo, or max, and you can also set the water level for mopping. On the X8 Pro, this is only accessible with the mop attachment installed. I'd recommend enabling Boost IQ because this automatically adjusts the suction level based on the floor type, for example increasing when over thick carpets. But notice you can choose whether to mop, vacuum, or both with the X9 Pro. That's of course possible thanks to the auto-lifting mop pads. There's a dense mopping option here as well, plus an edge hugging mode for an even deeper clean along the walls. That's actually another of the eufy Lab features, and to be honest, I didn't notice that much of a difference from the standard mopping, but you can enable it if you want. There are also buttons to send the RoboVac back to its base, and you can manually activate the Auto Empty feature or the Roller Brush Detangler on the X8 Pro. With the X9 Pro, you can instead manually activate a mop washing or drying here. And then in the Settings tab, this is essentially the same between models, just that the X9 Pro has those eufy Lab settings we talked about, as well as the carpet cleaning settings. One feature I really like is you can create multiple different cleaning schedules. You can specify the type of clean, which map this applies to, which days this repeats on, and the time it starts. You also get a detailed cleaning history. This is improved from previous models, and you can see exactly where your RoboVac went and for how long on every clean. Then in the base station settings, you can choose how often the X8 Pro will auto-empty, or how often the X9 Pro will return to wash the mop during a clean. You can also set how long the drying duration is. In the RoboVac settings tab, you can toggle auto-return cleaning. This means if it doesn't quite cover the whole map on a single charge, it will return to the base station for a battery top-up before resuming the clean exactly where it left off. You might want to pair this up with the Do Not Disturb mode, where, during the hours you set, perhaps when you're sleeping, they won't auto-return clean or perform the auto-empty so the noise doesn't disturb you. There's also now a child lock to prevent tampering with the buttons on the RoboVac, and you can choose your preference with the area units, if for some reason you're not living in the 21st century and using the metric system. You can set the voice language and volume for the cleaning alerts, update the firmware, and share the RoboVac with other people so they can have access without logging into your eufy account. There's also a Find My Robot feature for if your house is somehow so big that you end up getting it lost. And the final feature to cover is in the Manage Map section, and that's multi-floor mapping. You can use a single RoboVac to clean multiple floors in your home, and it will save individual maps for each one. This isn't a new feature, but it has been improved massively, and it's now much easier to save a new map and not risk it overwriting your current map, which could be an annoying issue before. With the maps established, you can simply place the X8 or X9 Pro onto any floor, it will automatically position itself and switch to the appropriate map, and then start the clean. You don't even need to move the base station between floors after you've done it once to set up the map. So just one RoboVac can clean your entire home, and I really love this feature. Okay, so clearly these are both absolutely packed with features, but how do they actually perform? How good is the vacuuming, and how good is the mopping? Well, starting with the vacuuming and the X9 Pro, you've got 5,500 pascals of suction power, which is already higher than the previous RoboVacs. And despite the obvious mopping capabilities here, it's actually a great vacuum cleaner too, and does a good job of keeping up with my pet hair-filled household. But the X8 Pro is still the vacuum king, with a twin turbine system supplying 2 times 4,000 pascals of suction, twice as much as the X8, and there's a 40% increase in the airflow as well. If you were to compare against the X9 Pro side by side, then you'll see how this gives the 8 an advantage. The higher suction power, combined with the bristles on the roller brush, meant that it was more effective with removing the pet hair from my carpets. What was interesting was when I put some seeds down on my carpet to try some larger, firmer subjects, and then it was the X9 Pro that came out on top. I'd imagine that the 9's rubber roller acted as a kind of scoop for those seeds, whereas the 8's bristles may have scattered them across the carpet more. I repeated these tests on the hard floor and both comfortably dealt with the pet hair, but this time it was the X8 Pro that vacuumed the seeds more effectively, which was interesting. And then I scattered some strips of flour to try and emulate dust or lighter particles, and found that the X8 Pro was then much more effective. Again, you can imagine those brushes on the roller sweeping up the dust into the vacuum. Now obviously these side-by-side situations aren't necessarily realistic of a normal clean, but you can imagine how this might translate to the general performance in the home, and you can see the overall vacuum advantage for the X8 Pro. One note on the auto-detangling roller brush feature, I'd say that this is a really clever feature, and I do think this has helped compared to how much my X8 used to get tangled. For pet hair, it's great, but it's still not completely tangle-free, and you may on occasion need to whip out the blade tool to clear those thicker fibres. The X9 Pro's roller brush on the other hand is relatively tangle-free just by its design. It requires even less maintenance, but the trade-off is that it isn't quite as effective with vacuuming. As you might have guessed though, this completely flips when it comes to mopping, and there are no surprises here. You've got almost twice as much downward pressure with the X9 Pro for starters, but the fact that the mop pads spin as well, with 3 rotations per second, gives it the clear mopping advantage. You can still see the effect the X8 Pro is having, it's no slouch, and it can definitely help mop your home. I mean, the proof is left on the mop pad, so it's definitely a useful feature to be able to add on when needed. But clearly this isn't going to be able to compete with the more powerful mopping features the X9 Pro has, including the fact that I can simply leave my X9 in vacuum and mop mode permanently, thanks to the auto lifting pads, and the fact that they get a thorough automatic cleaning afterwards. Remember back in my X8 Hybrid review when I said this:
"It won't be able to tackle sticky residues or deep stains, though I recognise that that's more of a comment on the limitations of robot mops right now. The technology just doesn't exist yet for them to mop anywhere near as effectively as a human could."
Yeah, well, now they can. One thing I noticed that could be viewed as a downside is that on this new and very thick carpet, the mop pads just gently brush across the surface. They can only lift so much. Now, it's not enough to leave me with wet carpets, and you could always use no mop zones or the carpet avoidance feature. But an even better solution I use is to simply create 2 different schedules. One for vacuum only, cleaning my carpeted rooms first. The mop pads stay dry, so it doesn't matter if they touch the carpet. And I follow this immediately with a mop vacuum for my hard floor rooms. There's no need for the no mop zones at all, so you can be smart with how you use it. There's just enough battery to cover my entire ground floor, just over 50 square meters, and that's for vacuuming and mopping with standard water and suction levels. The X8 Pro can also do the whole lot and usually has about 20% remaining, so I only use the auto return cleaning feature with deeper cleans. I was also pleased that the mop washing doesn't make too much noise and is over in a few minutes anyway. But the drying noise is very quiet, and something you could easily let run whilst you're asleep. The X8 Pro's self-empty on the other hand is pretty loud, but it does only last a few seconds, so it's barely an inconvenience. I also wanted to mention that the mapping and navigation has been excellent, and certainly one of the strengths versus the competition. It's efficient, the RoboVacs basically never require any assistance, even with the tricky terrain I currently have laid down with my makeshift puppy training carpet. It creates multiple hazard areas where a lesser cleaner could easily get trapped. In fact, my X8 did a couple of times. But these Pro RoboVacs can wriggle themselves out of tight spots a lot better than previous models. They'll closely clean around your furniture, and because it's laser-based navigation, they don't require any light to do this either. They're the most self-sufficient robotic vacuum cleaners I've used yet, and now even more so thanks to the functionality the new base stations offer. So finally, here's how the two models compare in terms of pricing, although there are often significant deals on both of these, so I'll provide the current pricing as of making this video as well. And here's how the X8 and 9 Pro stack up with the other specs as well. Although realistically, I think the differences in the cleaning abilities of each model is overshadowed by the significance of how each one offers a unique convenience advantage. The self-emptying of the X8 Pro is awesome. It gives me a month and a half of hands-free vacuuming, but obviously needs assistance whenever mopping is involved. If you forget to clean the mop attachments or leave them and forget to place down the waterproof pad, then you're asking for problems. Whereas the X9 Pro can mop, wash and dry for weeks all by itself, and the auto-lifting mop pads when over carpets is a real game changer. But you might need to empty its dust box every time. It requires a little more attention overall. I think this fundamental difference is the ultimate deal breaker, and essentially hinges on whether it's convenient vacuuming or convenient mopping that's your priority. It's tempting to call the X8 Pro a robotic vacuum cleaner with some mopping functionality, and the X9 Pro a robotic mop with some vacuuming capacity, but that perhaps does more of a disservice to the latter, and I can understand why it's the more expensive model of the two. You've probably already identified which model would be best for your home. But a couple of other things to consider are firstly the size and the appearance of the base station. The two actually take up a fairly similar sized overall footprint, given that the X9 Pro docks inside of the base station rather than in front of it. But the station itself is quite clearly rather large and won't blend in as seamlessly in your home as the X8 Pros, especially if you opt for the tiny non-self-emptying version. Also notice that the X8 Pro is slightly shorter, so it may fit underneath your furniture a bit better, and also its completely round shape means there's less chance of it getting stuck in a corner. For me, there wasn't any significant difference between the two, both in terms of how well each can clean into the corner and also their maneuverability, but it's something to consider. And finally, consider the long-term cost as well. Both may eventually need replacement parts, filters, side brushes, etc., but only the self-emptying X8 Pro has the ongoing cost of the vacuum bag replacements. Now, if you were to work off of eufy's 45-day estimate per bag, the original prices for these RoboVacs, plus the fact that you get 2 replacement bags for free with the app, then at $18.99 for a double pack, it would take you around 3¼ years before you've spent the same on the X8 Pro and the replacement bags as you would on the X9 Pro. You can think of your RoboVac as an investment. And who knows, maybe you'll make it longer than 45 days before the bag is full. Maybe you'll choose to manually empty the dust box before it reaches the base station. Or maybe you'll find other ways to extend the bag's lifespan. Just think about the fact that the X9 Pro might start at a higher price, but the replacement water you'll need for your X9 Pro will be considerably cheaper than those vacuum bags. Okay, I think we'll wrap things up there, but on the whole, I've been pretty impressed with the new RoboVacs. More importantly though, what do you think? In an ideal world, I'd merge the base stations of the X8 and 9 Pro to create one super RoboVac that has auto-cleaning and is self-emptying for a truly autonomous cleaning experience. Although, imagine the size of the base station on that beast. If you found this video helpful, then please give it a like, and if you want to see more content like this, then make sure to subscribe, but also hit the bell icon so you actually get notified when new videos go live. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.